They say Unity College is like any other school in Lagos until the clock strikes midnight. Then, the walls stretch, the gates vanish, and the school becomes a place no living student is meant to see. Zainab didn't believe the stories until the night she found herself inside. And the gates were gone. The rain had been falling all day, thick drops hammering the zinc roofs of Lagos like 1,000 impatient fingers. By evening, the street outside Unity College was almost empty, except for the soft hiss of tires splashing through puddles. Zainab sat alone in the science lab, her pen scratching quietly over a piece of graph paper. The hum of the ceiling fan mixed with the distant sound of rainwater gurgling in the gutters. Her classmates had left hours ago. Even the principal's voice over the PA, telling students to go home early because of the rain, hadn't moved her. She had to finish her physics project. It was due the next morning, and she was determined not to fail. The clock on the wall ticked loudly. Tick, tick, tick. The hands crawled towards midnight. A sudden sound made her pause, footsteps in the hallway. They were slow, heavy, and oddly wet, as though whoever it was had walked through rain and not bothered to dry their shoes. Hello. Zainab called, her voice echoing. No answer. She stood, pushed her chair back, and peeked through the lab door. The hallway was empty, the fluorescent lights flickering slightly. At the far end, near the trophy cabinet, a shadow moved, too fast to be from the swaying light. The rain outside grew heavier, beating the windows so hard she could barely hear her own breathing. She stepped into the hallway. That's when she noticed something strange. The air felt thicker, like it was holding its breath. The colors of the corridor seemed a little duller, the light more yellow than it had been minutes ago. She made her way towards the main gate. She'd had enough for the night. But when she reached the gate, her stomach dropped. The wide iron bars were gone. In their place was a narrow street she had never seen before. The street lamps were old-fashioned, casting a warm orange glow on wet cobblestones. Cobblestones, in Lagos. And there were people. Students in faded brown uniforms, walking slowly, their heads bowed. Their footsteps echoed, but none of them spoke. Zainab stepped back, her heart thudding. One of the girls looked up, meeting her eyes. Her face was pale, her hair neatly plaited, but her eyes were cloudy, like she was staring from somewhere far away. You're not supposed to be here yet, the girl whispered. Her voice was like the wind, thin and cold. A loud bell rang in the distance. Not the harsh electric school bell she knew, but the deep, metallic clang of an old church bell. The students stopped walking. Slowly, they all turned towards her. Panic surged through Zainab. She turned and ran back into the school building. But the hallways were changing, doors appeared where there hadn't been any, windows shifted, stairs twisted around in impossible angles. The school was alive, and it was rearranging itself. Somewhere behind her, she heard the soft sound of bare feet slapping against the floor. She ducked into the library, slamming the door shut. The smell of old paper filled the air. But this wasn't the same library she knew. The shelves were taller, the books older, their titles written in languages she didn't recognize. Candles flickered on the tables, though there was no wind to move them. From a shadowed corner, a boy's voice spoke. You shouldn't have crossed over. Now the school knows you. Zainab froze. Who's there? A boy stepped into the candlelight. He looked her age, maybe a little older. His uniform was faded and torn at the hem, his shoes scuffed beyond repair. But his eyes, dark and sharp, watched her like he'd been expecting her. They call this the midnight school, he said. It exists between the real world and something else. It appears only after the 12th chime. And once you're in, you can't leave until you solve the riddle. What riddle? Zainab asked, her voice trembling. The boy didn't answer. Instead, he walked to a shelf and pulled down an enormous, dust-covered book. He placed it on the table and opened it, revealing a faded photograph. It was Unity College. But the date at the bottom read 1962. And the students in the photo, they were the same ones she'd just seen outside. Thunder roared overhead, shaking the windows. The boy leaned closer. You have until the bell rings at dawn. Fail, and you stay here forever, just like us. Zainab's heart pounded. Just like you. But you're... He smiled sadly. Dead. Something like that. A sound made them both turn, a slow creak, like a door opening. Only, there was no door in that direction. The wall itself was splitting apart, revealing a dark passage that led downward. The boy closed the book. If you want to survive, you have to follow the path. But remember, never look back. The air in the library grew colder, her breath misting in front of her. She glanced once more at the photo. One of the ghostly students in the picture now had her face. Her knees almost gave way. She didn't know how that was possible, but she knew one thing: she couldn't stay in the library. The boy started down the dark passage, his footsteps echoing like hollow drums. Zainab hesitated, then followed, the candlelight shrinking behind them until there was only darkness. Somewhere in that darkness, something whispered her name. The steps beneath her feet were damp, as if rain had seeped into the stone long ago. The air smelled of wet earth and something faintly metallic, like old coins or blood. Each time her foot touched the ground, a hollow echo roared into the darkness ahead. The boy's shadow moved steadily in front of her, but he didn't speak. Only the sound of their breathing and the faint drip of water somewhere deep below filled the silence. After what felt like forever, they emerged into a vast underground hall. The ceiling was so high it disappeared into darkness, supported by stone pillars covered in carvings. Flickering lanterns hung between them, their light casting dancing shapes on the walls. Zainab's eyes were drawn to the far end of the hall, where a huge wooden desk stood. Behind it sat an old man in a brown suit, his face pale and lined like cracked parchment. His eyes were closed, but somehow she felt him watching her. The boy stepped forward. She's new. The old man's voice was deep, slow. New ones must earn their return. The riddle must be solved before the dawn bell. A soft rumble of thunder rolled through the hall, even though they were underground. The old man reached into a drawer and brought out a small brass key. He placed it on the desk. This key opens only one door in the school, he said. Behind that door is the answer you seek. But beware, every wrong door you open brings you closer to being claimed by the midnight school. Zainab took the key, her fingers trembling. How many doors are there? The old man smiled faintly. More than you can count. Suddenly the lanterns flickered, and in the blink of an eye, she was back in the school's main hallway. But it wasn't the hallway she knew, there were doors everywhere. Tall ones, short ones, some with carvings, others plain. They stretched into the distance, bending around corners that shouldn't exist. The boy appeared beside her again. Listen carefully. The right door will call to you, but not with sound. You'll feel it. They began moving down the hall, the rain outside now a soft patter against invisible windows. The first door they came to was painted bright red. She placed the key into the lock, it didn't fit. The next was plain wood, but when she touched it, the surface felt warm, like skin. She shuddered and stepped back. At the third door, carved with strange symbols, the key slid in easily. She hesitated, then turned it. The door swung open to reveal the school's playground. But it wasn't empty. Children were playing there, dressed in the same brown uniforms as the ghostly students outside. They laughed, but their laughter sounded strange, like a tape played too slowly. One of them stopped and stared at her. His mouth moved, but no words came out. The boy tugged her sleeve. Wrong door. Close it. Now. She slammed it shut. As she did, she felt the hallway shift under her feet. The walls seemed to close in slightly, and the ceiling lowered. They moved faster. More doors, more strange visions, the classroom floating in water, a kitchen where the pots stirred themselves, a dark room filled with ticking clocks. Each wrong door made the hallway feel tighter, the air heavier. Her chest burned with fear and exhaustion. Then she saw it, an old, weathered door at the very end of the hall. The brass key in her hand seemed to hum. "This is it," she whispered. She turned the key. The door creaked open into a small room with a single wooden desk. On the desk lay an open notebook. She stepped closer. The page was blank, until ink began to spread across it, forming words. "The school keeps what is forgotten. To live, you must return what was lost." Her mind raced. What had been lost? Then she remembered the old photo in the library. The one where her face had appeared among the ghostly students. "That photo," she murmured. The boy nodded. "It's in the library." But the library moves. They ran, the hallways twisting like a maze, until at last they burst into the candlelit room. The photo was still there, resting on the table. She grabbed it, but the paper felt strangely warm, as if alive. She looked at the faces. One by one, they began to fade, until hers was gone. The building groaned around them, and a deep, slow bell began to toll. "Dawn! Go!" the boy shouted. They sprinted towards the main gate. This time, the cobblestone street shimmered, melting away into the familiar asphalt road outside Unity College. The iron bars reappeared, the morning sun just touching their tops. Zainab stumbled through, falling onto the wet pavement. When she looked up, the school looked normal again. The rain had stopped. The students were arriving for class as if nothing had happened. She turned to thank the boy, but he was gone. Only a single brass key lay on the ground where he'd stood. Later that day, she asked an old gateman about Unity College's history. His face darkened. "They say, long ago, some students disappeared here. They were never found. And sometimes, at midnight, the school calls for more." That night, Zainab locked the key in a drawer and swore never to stay in the school after dark again. But deep down, she knew the midnight school wasn't finished with her. Background fades into the faint toll of a bell, then silence. Moral of the story: curiosity can open doors that cannot be closed. In seeking answers, remember, some mysteries are meant to be respected, not solved.